February 4th, 2014, Redmond, Washington.
Sunday was a really big day in Seattle.
Microsoft announces its third CEO in 40 years. Not a founder, not a Silicon Valley celebrity, a quiet engineer from Hyderabad who has spent 22 years inside the same company.
A boy from Hyderabad who failed his IIT entrance exam, yet received full support of his parents.
A father who sat by his son's bedside in Bellevue and slowly, over 2 years, had everything he thought he knew about himself taken apart and rebuilt.
The world is skeptical. Microsoft is a punchline. It missed the smartphones, it missed social media. Its stock had gone nowhere for 14 years. Smart people had written its obituary more than once.
The man chosen to lead it is not a loud man. He does not promise revolution. He just sends an email on his first day that doesn't talk about any overarching strategy, but an underpinning culture. The man is Satya Nadella.
The best talent we could find for this job was right here inside Microsoft.
He says the company needs to rediscover its soul. It's customary for most CEOs to say this kind of thing. Satya Nadella actually meant it in a way that would take the company from $300 billion to $3 trillion in a decade.
But to understand how, you have to go back to a cricket pitch in Hyderabad in the early 1970s, and then to his son Zain's hospital room in Bellevue, Washington in 1996, and to a book his wife gave him about a Stanford psychologist's research on why some people grow and others don't.
Those three things, cricket, his son Zain's condition, and a book called Mindset, that is the whole code. Hi, I am Vaishali.
And I'm Harsh, and this is the Victory Code podcast, where ambition meets direction. Today's quote belongs to Satya Nadella, the man who took the most stagnant giant in technology and rebuilt it from the inside out. Not by being the loudest person in the room, by being the one who listened.
It's the early 1970s, Hyderabad Public School, Begumpet, one of the most storied schools in India. It has produced cricketers, CEOs, and cabinet ministers. Satya Nadella is none of those things yet. He is a boy who is passionate about cricket and considerably less passionate about examinations.
And Vaishali, you've actually lived in Hyderabad for a few years. You must have been to Begumpet.
Yeah, I have. And here is what you must know about Begumpet. It is also the absolute hub of jewelry shops in the city. If you ever find yourself in Hyderabad, do not leave without walking through it. The school and the gold are practically neighbors.
Only on the Victory Code do we go from a future CEO to jewelry recommendations in the same breath. Anyway, back to the boy with the cricket bat. Satya's father is Bukkapuram Nadella Yugandhar, an IAS officer, a member of India's elite civil service, the administrative backbone of the Indian government. He is a Marxist economist who served as secretary to Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and later on in the Planning Commission under Manmohan Singh. Satya's mother Prabhavati is a Sanskrit professor.
Satya Nadella's father hangs a picture of Karl Marx in the house. His mother hangs a photo of goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth in Hindu mythology. But neither influences young Satya. His influence is M.L. Jaisimha, the cricketer known for his elegant style and absolute calm under pressure. That is the man Satya wants to become.
Satya Nadella's father looks at his report card and is, by Satya's own account, amazed that someone could be so bad at academics. But Satya Nadella's father never makes Satya feel ashamed of it. He says, "Life is a marathon. You will catch up." Satya's mother asks only one question: "Are you happy?" That is the only metric she cares about.
Two parents, two different philosophies. One child who absorbs both, and Satya spends the rest of his life proving that forward thinking and inner contentment are not obstacles to success. They are the engines.
One particular cricket match teaches him something that no classroom does. He is bowling for his high school team, a bad spell, the kind that costs matches. The captain takes over, gets a wicket, and then hands the ball back to Satya. And Satya goes on to bowl the best spell of his life.
Think of it like a pitcher in baseball having a terrible inning. The manager pulls him, comes in to get the team out of trouble, and then, instead of leaving him on the bench, puts him back on the mound, and the pitcher throws the best inning of his life. Satya Nadella will tell this story for decades, not because it is dramatic, because it shows him exactly what a leader is. Someone who doesn't break your confidence when you're struggling. Someone who hands the ball back.
In 1988, Satya Nadella fails to clear the IIT entrance exam. I did too. He applies to Manipal Institute of Technology instead, I did too. He gets in.
You did it too, we get it. So Satya studies electrical engineering. He's not by any measure the most brilliant student in the room, but he is curious. He reads, he listens, he is without knowing it already building something more durable than the great.
Which brings us to the first victory code. Failure is a timestamp, not a tombstone. Satya's father never let poor grades become a verdict. He reframed the timeline. Not that you have failed, but you haven't arrived yet. Wow. That reframe is everything. In India, not getting into IIT is often treated as the end of the road. The IITs, Indian Institutes of Technology, are the country's most elite engineering schools, and for decades, the fast track to Silicon Valley was almost exclusively through their gates.
The same boy who couldn't get into the IIT would one day run the company that powers half the world's computing. He is, in that sense, the exception that rewrites the rule. The distance between those two facts is not talent, it is time and the belief that time is still on your side.
There's a TED talk that captures this perfectly. Carol Dweck's The Power of Believing That You Can Improve. She opens with a school in Chicago that stopped giving failing grades. Instead, they gave students the grade not yet. That's what Satya Nadella's father was doing, intuitively, before Dweck made it a science.
The book Mindset by Carol Dweck deals with this in detail. We are returning to this book because there is a story behind it in this particular episode and because it is the book that changes Microsoft. But it starts here, in a childhood where the adults around Satya already understood intuitively what Dweck would spend her career proving, that ability is not fixed, it is nurtured.
At 21, Satya Nadella leaves Hyderabad for United States. He is going to go to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee to study computer science. He knows almost no one. He has almost nothing. What he has is a degree in electrical engineering and a hunger to understand what computers can become.
He completes his master's. He joins Sun Microsystem. Sun is at this moment one of the most exciting companies in technology. Then someone at Microsoft calls. He makes the jump. Redmond, Washington. He is 24 years old and nobody could have predicted that this is the only move he would make for the next 32 years and counting.
But there is something else happening that same year. He marries Anupama, who he first got to know at school. They set up a life together in Redmond. He commutes to Chicago to get his MBA from the University of Chicago while working full-time at Microsoft. He is doing two very hard things at once and making neither look difficult.
That is the first sign of something essential in him. He does not treat hard things as extraordinary. He treats them as ordinary. And that ordinariness is what makes them possible.
Which brings us to a victory quote from his MBA years. Routine is the silent language of greatness.
Everyone remembers that Satya left India when he was 21. Now, nobody talks about what happened the morning after he arrived in United States. The quiet hours, the unfamiliar desk, the work that began not with applause but with habit. Greatness did not announce itself when he landed. It began to whisper the moment he built his first routine in a new country and refused to break it.
And then consider what came next. He's working full-time at Microsoft in Redmond. And simultaneously, he's commuting to Chicago to pursue his MBA at Booth. No fanfare, no announcement, just a man on a flight twice a week with a briefcase in one hand and a textbook in the other. Nobody was watching, nobody was applauding. He was simply doing what needed to be done, quietly, consistently, without making it a spectacle. That is not ambition, that is routine.
There's a story about Jerry Seinfeld that captures this code better than almost anything I have read. Early in his career, someone asked him how he became a great comedian. He said he wrote a joke every single day. Not when he felt inspired, not when he had time. Every day. And on a wall calendar, he marked each day he wrote with a big red X. After a few days, he had a chain. And the only job after that was simple. Don't break the chain. That is it. That is the whole system. Not genius, not motivation, just a chain of red X's on a wall.
And the book that lives inside this code is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Most people remember it as a story about destiny. Read it again. It is actually a story about the boy who walked the same desert step after silent step, long after the magic had stopped feeling like magic. That is where the treasure was, not in the revelation, in the repetition. Satya Nadella's life has that same quiet rhythm. He didn't just leave Hyderabad. He arrived and then he showed up every day at Microsoft, at Booth, at home with Anupama, without announcement, without complaint. That is the language he spoke, and greatness listened.
1996. Satya is 28. He is building a career at Microsoft that is genuinely taking off. Satya and his wife Anupama are expecting their first child. It is by his own accord a really thrilling time. Careers ascending, baby on the way, everything where it is supposed to be.
One night in the 36th week, Mrs. Nadella notices the baby is not moving as much as usual. They go to the ER. What they expect is routine reassurance. What they get instead is an emergency C-section.
Their son Zain is born weighing just 3 pounds, having suffered in utero asphyxiation, oxygen deprivation before birth, which causes irreversible brain damage. He will be diagnosed with severe cerebral palsy, he will be legally blind, he will spend his life in a wheelchair.
Satya's first reaction is not what he's proud of. He will say this clearly years later. He was devastated, and his devastation was, at first, about himself, about his plans, about what this meant for him.
However, his wife Anu's reaction was the opposite. She was out of the hospital and driving Zain to therapy after therapy within days. She never asked why. She only asked what she could do. And watching her, Satya slowly, over 2 years, get schooled. Without a lecture, without a single word of criticism directed at him.
Let us pause here, because what Anu does in this moment is not a footnote. It is the whole story. While Satya, a man who would go on to lead one of the most powerful companies in human history, was paralyzed by grief, his wife had already stood up, picked up her keys, and driven their son to therapy. No hesitation, no spiral, just movement, just love in its most operational form.
There is a particular kind of strength that mothers carry that has no name in any leadership textbook. It is not resilience, the word is too passive. It is not courage, that word implies fear was present. What Anu displayed was something older and quieter than both. It is the strength of someone who has already decided at some primal level that their child's need will always be louder than their own pain. Full stop.
And this is not unique to Anu. This is the architecture of motherhood itself. History is full of men who led armies and built empires, but behind almost every one of them was a mother who had already fought a harder war, in silence, without medals, without a board of directors watching. The strength of mothers is not celebrated because it does not perform. It simply endures, and in the end, it shapes everything.
Satya himself admits he was schooled. Not in a classroom, not by a mentor, but by a woman who never once said, "You are doing this wrong." She just kept doing it right. That is the most devastating form of teaching. The kind that needs no words. Anu did not give Satya a lecture on empathy, she gave him a 2-year masterclass, and he had the humility eventually to become her student.
He will describe this period many times, in many speeches and in his book, Hit Refresh. The lesson is always the same. Nothing happened to me, something happened to Zain. And it was time to step up and see the world through his son's eyes.
That shift from self-pity to perspective, from why me to what can I do, is the turning point. Not just as a father, but as a leader.
Zain's progress did not come in straight lines. Tiny improvements, setbacks, adaptations, learning to measure success in units invisible to the outside world. And Satya learns from this something that no business school can teach, that empathy is not sympathy.
Now, empathy is not feeling sorry for someone from comfortable distance. Empathy is climbing into their experience and looking at the world from inside it. And when Satya Nadella becomes CEO of Microsoft, it is that empathy that becomes the company's new operating system.
And this brings us to the victory quote from his fatherhood. Empathy is everything.
Zain's life completely reshaped Satya's understanding of what technology is for. When he visited his son in the ICU shortly after becoming CEO in 2014, he noticed all of Zain's medical devices running Windows, connected to the cloud. At that moment, the mission statement became very personal.
Empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more is not a marketing slogan. It is a commitment made by a father who watched his son need technology to participate in the world that most of us take for granted.
The resource I point you to for this is Jamil Zaki's TED Talk, "We are experiencing an empathy shortage, but we can fix it together." Zaki is a Stanford psychologist who has spent years proving something most people don't believe, that empathy is not a personality trait you're born with or without. It's a skill you can build. Satya Nadella didn't start out empathetic, he learned it. Zaki explained exactly how that's possible.
Also, Jamil Zaki's book, The War for Kindness, delves deeper into this with some very interesting anecdotes. It's full of stories of people who built empathy in the hardest possible circumstances. A former neo-Nazi, prison judges, emergency room nurses. What Satya Nadella did quietly in Bellevue over 2 years Zaki shows you can do deliberately. It changed the way I think about what leadership actually requires of a person.
Yeah. Satya Nadella is at Microsoft for 22 years before he becomes CEO. He leads Windows NT, he leads the online services division, MSN, Bing. Steve Ballmer tells him when putting him in charge of the cloud business that there is no parachute if it fails. He doesn't fail. He builds Azure into foundation of everything that comes after.
But while he's building, the company is struggling. Microsoft misses the smartphone revolution. It misses social media. By 2013, Windows Phone has 3% global market share. The Nokia acquisition is a $7 billion disaster. Internal teams are at war with each other. The stack ranking performance system, which grades employees on a curve against their own colleagues, has created a culture where the smartest people spend enormous energy protecting the image of being smart rather than actually learning anything new. The company that Bill Gates built to empower people is failing to empower its own people.
And yet, inside the same company, Satya Nadella has built something real. Azure is growing. The cloud bet is beginning to pay. He has demonstrated in one of the most hostile internal environments in technology that a different kind of culture is possible. He listens, he asks questions, he admits when he does not know. In a company of know-it-alls, he has quietly been a learn-it-all.
On February 4, 2014, he becomes the third CEO in Microsoft's history. He does not celebrate. He sends an email. It talks about mobile first and cloud first, but mostly it talks about culture. He says, our industry does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation. And innovation requires a kind of honesty that the company had forgotten.
That honesty is the foundation of everything that follows, which brings us to the victory quote from his approach as the CEO.
Keep learning or stagnate. 22 years in the same company. Most people would have calcified. Satya Nadella did not. Satya Nadella took lateral moves that most ambitious people would have declined. He ran businesses considered unglamorous. He never assumed he had learned enough. And because he never assumed he had arrived, he kept growing in a company that had mostly stopped growing around him. The day you call yourself an expert is the day you stop compounding. That is not luck. That is a daily choice made every morning.
There's a TED talk that explains this quote better than anything else I've found. Eduardo Briceño's How to Get Better at Things You Care About, he identifies something most high performers never realize. That once you are good at something, you naturally stop entering the learning zone and stay in a performance mode. You stop getting better. Satya Nadella spent 22 years at Microsoft deliberately refusing to do that. Briceño explains the science of why that's so rare and so powerful.
And then there's Carol Dweck's mindset. Here it is again. Because this is the book Satya's wife Anu gives him in early 2015 while he's trying to figure out how to change a company of over 100,000 people. She has been thinking about it in a different context. Their youngest daughter, who has learning difficulties, and a school in Vancouver focused on neuroplasticity. The same framework that helps one child learn turns out to be the same framework which helped Satya Nadella rescue one of the largest companies in history.
One of Nadella's first and most significant acts as CEO was to declare that the cultural change had to go deeper. Stack ranking was already gone, but the fear it had left behind was still there. And he set about dismantling that. It was a system that pitted employees against each other for more than a decade. He replaces it with continuous feedback and coaching. He tells his managers not to ask whether an employee has hit the targets, but to ask if they had learned something new. Small words, enormous differences.
He gathers 180 of his most senior leaders and asks them one question. What kind of culture do we want? Not what is our strategy, but what is our culture? Because he knows, as someone who has read Dweck and lived through Zane's childhood, that culture is not a consequence of strategy. Culture is what makes strategy possible or impossible.
He says publicly and repeatedly that don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. He models it. Every month, he sends the company a video of his top learnings. He asks at the end of every meeting, was that a growth mindset meeting or a fixed mindset meeting? The question sounds simple, but applied to 125,000 people every day, it is a revolution.
The acquisitions follow. LinkedIn for $26 billion in 2016, GitHub for $7.5 billion in 2018, and in 2019, a partnership with OpenAI that most people in the industry consider a side bet. Satya considers it the future. The company that once called Linux a cancer because Linux is a free open source operating system that threatened Microsoft's paid software empire, is now the company that says Microsoft loves Linux.
Satya Nadella made that statement publicly in 2014 and it was seismic. It signaled that Microsoft would stop fighting open source and start embracing it. Microsoft now contributes more code to Linux than almost any other company on earth. The enemies that Microsoft spent the 90s trying to destroy are now the partners Microsoft needs to grow.
The stock, which went nowhere for 14 years, grows tenfold in a decade. The market cap crosses $1 trillion, then 2, then 3. By 2023, Microsoft is the most valuable company on earth. Not because Satya Nadella is a genius, because he is also a learner, and he built a company of learners.
And this brings us to the victory quote from Satya's leadership at Microsoft. Culture before strategy. When Satya becomes CEO, Microsoft has a strategy problem, a product problem, a competitiveness problem. He treats all three as one problem, that is culture. If the culture is one where people are afraid to be wrong, no strategy survives contact with reality, no product gets better fast enough, no competitor is taken seriously enough. He does not fix the strategy first, he fixes the culture first. The strategy follows. That is not a theory, that is the proof of the largest corporate turnaround in modern history.
Amy Edmondson's talk, Building a Psychologically Safe Workplace, explains exactly what Satya Nadella did at Microsoft. She coined the term psychological safety, the idea that people only do their best thinking when they are not afraid of being wrong. Microsoft's old stack ranking system was the opposite of psychological safety. Every person Satya Nadella chose to protect over a performance number was a direct application of Edmondson's research.
And if you wish to delve deeper into this idea, her book, The Fearless Organization, is the way to go. It's essentially the academic case of everything Satya Nadella did when he became CEO. Edmondson shows with 20 years of research that the single biggest predictor of a high-performing team is whether people feel safe enough to speak up, make mistakes, and keep learning. That is not a soft idea. That's what Microsoft's $3 trillion recovery was built on.
Here is the part of Satya Nadella's story that almost never makes it to the business press. He reads poetry, American and Indian poetry, not as a hobby, as a discipline. He says that poetry teaches him to read with intent, to search for meaning between the words, to understand that what is not said is as important as what is. He has spoken about how the poet Rainer Maria Rilke's instruction to live in the questions rather than forcing the answers shaped his entire approach to leadership.
And he still plays cricket. He co-owns the Seattle Sounders Football Club and the Seattle Orcas cricket team. He runs, he reads, he meditates. He's not a man who separates the inner life from the outer work. He's a man who knows from decades of evidence that the inner life is where the outer work comes from. The empathy that changed Microsoft came from a hospital room in Bellevue. The patience that built Azure came from a cricket pitch in Hyderabad. None of it is separate. All of it is one person.
Which brings us to another victory code: lead from within. Every great decision Satya made as CEO can be traced to something that happened inside him first, not in a boardroom. The empathy came from Zen. The patience came from cricket. The curiosity came from a father who said, life is a marathon. The growth mindset came from a book his wife gave him, not a McKinsey consultant. The inner life produced every outer result. Character is not a prerequisite for leadership. It is the source code. If the source code is wrong, the product fails no matter how polished the interface is.
Zain sadly passed away at 26 years old in February 2022. The company's response was not a press release. It was a quiet private grief. Satya's public reflection afterwards were not dramatic. They were restrained and deeply moving. He spoke not of tragedy alone, but of gratitude for what his son had taught him about patience, dignity, and the quiet courage embedded in daily survival. The same qualities he had tried to build into a company of 125,000 people. The man and the mission were never separate.
Hit Refresh by Satya Nadella himself delves deeply into his life. It's a book about how a person's inner life becomes a company's outer reality. He writes about Zain, about Anu, about the years of slow, private transformation that preceded the very public turnaround. You won't find that kind of honesty from many sitting CEOs of companies this size.
Satya Nadella spent his childhood being told gently that he was not extraordinary. His grades were poor, he failed his IIT entrance. His most significant role model was a cricketer, not a CEO. And the most important lesson he ever learned came not from a boardroom or a university, but from watching his wife drive their severely challenged son to therapy after therapy.
He never confused intelligence with wisdom. He never confused strategy with culture. He never confused the performance zone with the learning zone. He stayed in the learning zone longer than anyone around him at every stage of his career. And when the moment came to perform, he had more to draw from than anyone in the room.
And he held the contradictions without resolving them. The Marxist son who built one of capitalism's largest fortunes. The cricket lover who runs a software empire. The father who sat with the hardest thing life handed him, watching his son fight every single day, and quietly turned that love into a reason to build something that mattered. These are not contradictions, they are the whole person. And the whole person is what a company runs on.
His daughter's learning difficulties led him to a school in Vancouver focused on neuroplasticity. He moved his family there. His wife, who gave up her architecture career to raise Zain, taught him what empathy actually means. And Zain, who lived every day with more courage than most of us will ever need, left this world in 2022. But he never left Satya's vision of what technology should be for.
The company he runs reflects all of it, in ways that most shareholders will never fully trace. But they are there, in every accessible design, in every product that empowers someone the old Microsoft would have ignored, in every hire that happens because someone decided a learn-it-all was worth more than a know-it-all. And this brings us to a victory quote that's the sum total of all, that is Satya Nadella.
Enduring work begins with an enduring self. The people who create the most enduring institutions are not the ones with the best strategy at the start. They are the ones whose inner life is strong enough to hold the outer work together when everything else is uncertain. Satya did not walk into Microsoft in 2014 with a plan.
He walked in with character. Empathy earned in a hospital room, patience learned on a cricket pitch, curiosity modeled by a father who called failure a marathon. Build that person first. The company is what grows from it.
Robert Waldinger's What Makes a Good Life? Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness is a great TED talk on this. He runs the longest study on human happiness ever conducted. More than 75 years, tracking the same people from youth into old age. The finding is simple and slightly devastating if you've been chasing the wrong things. It's not wealth or status that determines how well you live and lead. It's the depth of your relationships. Satya Nadella built a person. The person built a company. Waldinger proves that's the only order that works.
And the book to close with is The Road to Character by David Brooks. He argues that the people who last, the ones who don't just succeed but actually hold together under pressure, are built on what he calls eulogy virtues, not resume virtues, not what you achieved, what you became. Satya Nadella's parents started building that in him before Satya had a single achievement to show. That's the whole point of this episode.
Hyderabad, a boy with poor grades and a cricket bat.
He went to Manipal, then Milwaukee, then Redmond, and then he changed the world from a corner office that most people never expected him to reach.
He donated $15 million to Seattle Children's Hospital and built the Zain Nadella Endowed Chair in Pediatric Neurosciences in his son's name so that every child who comes after Zain gets a fighting chance.
He donated $2 million to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, the same university that gave him his first real shot, to make sure students from underserved communities get the education that transforms lives.
He donated every rupee of profit from his book Hit Refresh to Microsoft Philanthropies. The story of how he rebuilt a company became the funding for rebuilding communities.
He launched a global skills initiative to help 25 million people find work after COVID wiped out their livelihoods. Not because Microsoft needed the publicity, because he believed that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not.
India gave him the Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian award in the Republic of India in 2022. Fortune named him Business Person of the Year in 2019. The same year, Financial Times named him Person of the Year. And through all of it, he stayed the same man who asks at the end of every meeting, was that a growth mindset or a fixed mindset?
The monuments he built are not made of glass and steel. They are made of children who got better care. Students who got a seat at a table that wasn't built for them. And 125,000 people at Microsoft who finally felt safe enough to say, I don't know, let me learn.
If today's episode changed how you see what's possible, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you're not already subscribed, now is the time. For every episode of the Victory Code, we take one extraordinary immigrant life, decode the decisions that made it, and extract the principles you can actually use.
Not inspirations, systems, not motivation, codes, the specific mental framework and decision pattern that turn ordinary circumstances into extraordinary outcomes.
I'm Harsh.
And I'm Vaishali, and this is the Victory Code Podcast.